All right, well, I've got about 6, 7 after, so we can go ahead and get started. For those of you that have joined, I appreciate it. This is the Chamber's Economic Development Committee. It's kind of an oversight committee to some of the other committees that we have, construction developers, transportation, workforce, et cetera. And this afternoon, Valerie Morin and Angeline Button are going to talk to us about cybersecurity. Valerie is the team lead for the cybersecurity and healthcare team and supports professionals with navigating cybersecurity consulting, healthcare, delivery, policy improvement, and quality payment programs for all players. Angela is a senior cybersecurity consultant and trusted advisor of technology solutions, specializing in threats from phishing, vishing, smishing, and other threats. I've never heard of vishing and smishing, so you'll have to at least spend a couple seconds discussing that.
Well, we'll do so.
And without further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Angela.
You can just call me Angel. That one works
Angel.
good.
Okay.
That's fine.
I didn't want to
There's
presume.
a lot of
I saw
nicknames.
that in parentheses, but I didn't want to presume. So Angel, take it away. You've got the screen.
Thank you. And Valerie, I'm going to let Valerie start with this part of it. Not that I'm letting you. Valerie's going to start with this part of it.
Yeah. Are you going to bring up our first slide?
Oh, did
and
you not
Angel
see?
is I don't see it unless I'm missing it. Do you guys see it?
Make sure you can see that.
She is a true angel, though. While she's bringing that slide up, she is definitely an angel on our team. So I want to just thank the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce and all the members today for allowing us to give you guys a brief webinar education session on cutting cybersecurity. And that means, hey, you may have just hacked yourself. So why is cybersecurity not a good area to cut? So for those of you guys who haven't heard of Adafio or know about Adafio, you know, we have presence here in North Little Rock is our main office, Conway and Rogers as well. Our difference, we feel like, goes beyond words, and we really adhere to our core values so that we are pairing up with our business partners. And so our client success is our success. We aim to treat each other especially our clients, with humility and respect, and a relentless focus on integrity in everything that we do. We're a leading IT provider and consulting firm that has been around since 1999, and we have long-term partnerships with 200 plus mid to enterprise level businesses across healthcare, financial, and many other industries. We've also been recognized most recently as a top managed service provider and consultants in North America. So a little bit about Adafio. The other thing I wanted to make sure to remind you guys of here is if you do have questions or comments as we're going through the content today for myself or Angel or anyone on the team at Adafio, go ahead and just put those out in the chat, in the comments. We'll get to those at the end, and Melissa will help us stay on track and get all of those answered.
All right, well, you've already kind of gotten a little bit of my bio. So I am Angeline Button. You can call me Angel. I'm a senior cybersecurity consultant at Adafio. I've worked in IT over 12 years, and about 8 of those has been in cybersecurity. So kind of gotten to get in the game of it towards the beginning and work my way. Watching this evolve over time has been really fun. I'm very passionate about taking small businesses or any kind of business or organization that is starting out in their cybersecurity journey and helping them to mature it and come up with a cybersecurity plan over 3 to 5 years to help them grow. And I also, I'm a mother of 2, and I have, of course, our Schnauzer, Professor Snape, that's usually in the background here. But also I'm a grandmother as of yesterday, so it's pretty exciting. That's it.
And as you guys mentioned earlier, I'm Valerie Moring, the Healthcare and Cybersecurity Lead. Been at Adafio since 2017 and manage a team of professionals, consultants that work on a number of healthcare and cybersecurity services that ranges from security risk assessments, information security program management, compliance consulting, quality payment programs for those in healthcare. That's really just accountable care and making sure that our physicians and our hospitals are reporting that type of quality to their payers. And most recently this year in 2020, I've started serving on the advisory board for UCA's computer science program. I also coordinate the company's cycling and walking groups to promote health and wellness for the associates. And I have 2 daughters and a husband live here in Central Arkansas.
So let's discuss, this is what we're going to go over kind of high level during the webinar. We're going to discuss whack-a-mole security. What does that mean? It's a reactive type of security, and we'll go into that in more detail. We're going to talk briefly about how you can own your own security. We're going to give us some takeaways of some things that you could do in the near future to work towards improving your cybersecurity, including security awareness for you and your employees, two-factor authentication, sometimes called MFA, multi-factor authentication. You've probably heard one of those terms before, but we'll go into what it is and why you need it. Email hygiene, and additionally means we have a couple other items that aren't really part of our top 3 just to kind of show you guys, but we want you to be aware of them, so we're going to give you some additional resources. And then we're going to talk briefly about why cybersecurity insurance, why do you need it, what value is there in having it, and then how could you make sure you get an effective cybersecurity insurance for yourself or for your organization. So we're going to start with a statistic, which these numbers always shock me, but in 2019, Verizon, they had just released their 2019 Verizon DBIR report and found that 43% of breaches involved small businesses. And the largest percentage of victims came from small, medium-sized businesses. Now, 43% of all the breaches for the entire year are small businesses now. And then if you take small and medium, put them together, is more than 50% of all of the breaches that we're seeing that year. So that's a huge jump that we're looking at. And then it becomes an issue of how can we help small and medium-sized businesses better improve their cybersecurity so that it's less likely that they're going to be part of the breaches in the future. So we have the top kind of things that we will be talking about, and there's some additional ones is applying the idea of two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, idea of social awareness, learn the science of being socially engineered, whether it's, we'll talk about phishing, smishing, or email. And then stay sanitary. Double check your outward facing systems and establish strong security baselines as well as your email. We'll talk about that email hygiene. And then password management. Don't reuse your password for more than one application or service, and use a password manager. We'll give you some resources at the end of this of some very cost-effective password managers you could use for your company, as well as some free ones that could be used for a very small business or for your personal use. So the idea of, oh, I'm ahead there, didn't mean to do that. Okay, so we're going to start out with why keeping your organization safe from cyber attacks involves more than playing whack-a-mole. So I went right to our whack-a-mole one here. So whack-a-mole is the idea of something creeps up in a cybersecurity event, an attack of some sort, and you react to it and you fix that one, and then another one pops up and you're fixing that one. So you're reacting to the events that are happening to you, whether it's CEO fraud, which is like an email pretending to be from your CEO saying, hey, I need you to get me these Steam gift cards. Can you buy them for me? And then send them, you know, or send them back to me from this email address, or reply here. And it's not, it's actually a spoofed from a cyber criminal that's attempting to get you to, you know, buy the Steam gift cards, which people do. And then when it happens, you're trying to get your money back, and then what happens in the organization is we start reacting to that to try to fix it. Whether it's a wire transfer where we notify the FBI and they try to get the money back for you, everything in that, and this part of cybersecurity is reactionary. So what we want to do is, can we get from reactive to proactive, or we want to keep reactive, but we also want to incorporate proactive cybersecurity. So this is what we're going to do towards doing that. Actually, kind of like looking at like a hospital. So let's say you get in a car accident and you go to the hospital. So when you're in the hospital, it's a reaction. The hospital's treating you for an injury that you've had, and then they get you better, and then you leave the hospital. So you get home and you're like, I need to take some defensive driving courses. So I'm going to take those so that I can react to an accident better the next time. So you take those to stop you from getting into an accident. So it's not guaranteeing it, but it's another layer towards that. So that becomes proactive. So there's kind of an analogy. So here we go. Here's some examples in security of what we consider reactive and proactive. So we have some reactives like a password reset. So your email's been compromised, a 365 account, and you find out that a whole mess of emails are being sent by the hundreds out of your email account, and it's not you. You have people that are calling you and telling you, so you find out your email account's been compromised. So a password reset in that instance is a reaction to that event. Blocking IPs. So you have a situation where you're getting some IPs or different IPs from different locations or attempting to log into your email account. So you're blocking specific IPs. That's a reaction, and the whack-a-mole is continually blocking more and more IPs as you go. Incident response. So once you've been compromised, you have an incident response that goes in and checks to see if anything else had happened outside of sending those emails. Did it span out to other employees within the company that they also are compromised? As an incident response and as a reaction. Monitoring and learning is if you have like your 365 account alerts you to some suspicious behavior and says, hey, there's this unusual activity, just wanted you to be aware of that. That's the monitoring and alerting is also considered a reaction. The idea of proactive is to go and take a look within your organization and define your risk levels and come up with your risk management plan. So what are your critical assets? Within those critical assets, what kind of risk is there to each of those? And it starts to build out the roadmap for how you could, what should be the most important things that you work towards maturing security-wise for your company, and then what's the timeline for doing that. Vulnerability management is the idea of taking patching, updates to your application or firmware, and then doing those on a regular basis. So what's that going to be? Are you going to do it monthly? So are you going to set that to be automated and you run it monthly versus manually? Are you going to set up a test environment set where you first do an update there to make sure it's okay before you roll it out? So that's all part of your vulnerability management plan that you would work on. Disk encryption and protection we recommend as part of proactive. Define your disaster recovery plan. You'll hear BCDR mentioned, and define it for different events. So a ransomware event, what would you do for the ransomware event to get yourself back up and going, and how long would it take? What would you do for a fire? What would you do for an earthquake? So these kind of things that you have in place within your organization. And we always will recommend MFA, and we will explain why, which is your multi-factor authentication as well. Valerie, is there any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I was just thinking, Angel, on the proactive for the risk management especially. Sometimes it's really hard for organizations, whether they're small, medium, or large, honestly, to get started. So even just having that conversation and knowing, what regulatory requirements are actually required as part of your day-to-day business activity. So knowing if, PCI applies to you, or you need to pay attention to HIPAA, or some of the other ones that are coming down the pike and are newer, like GDPR. Those are things that really help you form, that risk management plan from a proactive standpoint.
Absolutely. Thank you. So just what Valerie said brings us into the idea of owning your security. So the idea of it is, we think in terms of, let's have a security team or somebody come in and there's cybersecurity, and they will define our cybersecurity roadmap for our organization. And we don't recommend that. We recommend the idea of collaboration. So business units, you have to if you can get more business units to work towards what your cybersecurity goals are, you get more of a buy-in, and not just a buy-in, but everyone's on board and working towards that together versus just one team isolated working on that and kind of pushing other units, business units or teams towards that. And even in a small business, an idea of just having maybe the owner, a manager, someone in accounts payable kind of work together and form a cybersecurity council, even if you're outside of regulations where you'd have a steering committee. And that just that little group, that small group, at least is 3 different areas that you'll be thinking about when you're building out what's critical for us. What is our security? Where is our security gaps? And how can we mature that over 3 to 5 years? That's like a security plan that you could create. And I think it's good to look at the idea of not doing everything quickly, but do some things at the front end that are critical, and then kind of work towards what is your maturity plan within your company.
Yeah, that's great, Angel. And setting quarterly goals, you know, that build out to a long term, you know, what are we going to, you know, complete the rest of 2020, and here's what we're going to do in Q3, Q4, and then just roll that on out into that longer term 3 to 5 year plan, like Angel said. So, so let's say that you guys agree here today that there's a need to collaborate, and you're going to start, or you're currently already defining the cybersecurity risk for your organization or business. What are some ways that you can make some changes now to make your business more secure with the least initial effort and the biggest impact, just to get you started? Because that's really, you know, having some easy, quick wins for organizations are super important. This is sometimes can be a massive effort. So you guys can see here another statistic. We really like statistics here at Adafio. So the median small business received 94% of its detected malware by email alone. So it's not enough just to give you those statistics to pay attention, because you're already paying attention and concerned. So how can you start protecting or continue, of course, like Angel said, to mature your cybersecurity roadmap? So there's 3 things that we think we're going to go over again today that would make the largest result versus effort. And so that's a security awareness program, multi-factor authentication, and email hygiene.
And then we have
So
a couple,
the first,
we'll have a couple more that we'll sneak in there as well as those 3. So.
That's right, because Angel always likes to give bonuses. You know, she's an angel.
Yeah, because I want bonuses. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, she's always looking for bonus points. So, so security awareness. Of course, this is, you know, your employees. This is something that we've been talking about at Adafio for a couple of years now. Your employees, your associates, are really your organization's last line of defense. And we really stress the fact that our employees are the human firewall. So you can put all these technical controls in place. You can do all these reactive things, but if you're not training your users, or you're not thinking about training your users, or your users don't understand how to, you know, handle emails or look for different tips, and you're not doing routine training that is changing with the times and not just kind of a one and done checkbox mentality, but training that is geared towards your regulatory frameworks, like we mentioned earlier, and risk that are going on today, then this is just an easy, quick win here for you to get started on that. Even though it may not be a requirement for your business to implement a security awareness program, because some of the, again, some of the regulatory frameworks do require this, it's definitely a best practice and not something that you want to just take it lightly, if you will. Something I actually read this morning on a feed that we read feeds and look at different things that are going on in the industry all the time, is a new book that came out recently called The State of the Dark Web ebook. So downloaded that early this morning, went over that with Angel, and here's a few statistics that I got just from this book this morning. So information on 267 million Facebook users were sold in Q1 of 2020 for $540. And also in Q1 of 2020, over 73.2 million new user records hit the dark web. So that's a huge number just in Q1 of this year alone. 164 million user records from a dozen major companies were exposed in a single Q1 2020 dump. And 53% of organizations have had a data breach caused by a third-party information theft. So those are just some things that are going on, recently this year in 2020.
And that's a really good call out, because I know, like I said, I love statistics. I know so does Valerie. But what it tells you is that we're all, and I know we all have seen it and we're all part of it on a personal level as well as within our organizations, seeing these emails that are continually coming in, and they are becoming better and better at what they do, where cyber criminals are attempting to get you to otherwise download malware, or to get you to put in your credentials, or to get you to give money in some way, shape, or form. So what we want to talk about, and these slides will be available. Melissa, we have a resource set that we're going to give, and she'll get that out there for everyone to view after this, so this slide will be viewable. But I'm just going to go over one thing on here. This is a part of KnowBefore's social engineering red flags, which we found very useful for just employees in general within Adafio, as well as helping our clients. And I think that there's value for your organization as well with just the slide. Is the biggest thing to look at, I think, and call out on it. I don't see enough of mentioned in articles and blogs, is the time. So you have an email come from your CEO at 3 a.m., and we all know CEOs that do this, but in general, you have a CEO at 3 a.m. sending you a message that sounds like really familiar, like, hey, I need you to get me, 7 Steam gift cards for $200 each, and can you send it back to me? Like, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. So you're like at 3 a.m. and you don't see it till the next day, and you're looking at it. Well, that should be a flag for you. The time is a big deal. So look at that, and that should be enough to go and reach out to somebody, the CEO, or to reach out directly to them, or to reach out to somebody else that can reach out to them. But don't reply to the email. Don't take a signature within the email and find their phone number or email address and reply off of that. Those we have seen a lot get manipulated and changed. And one time it was the phone number was changed by 1 digit in the signature. So find their information outside of that and reach out to them to see if that is a valid email. And we recommend that for anything. If all of a sudden you have this email string going back and forth with someone that you work with in accounts payable and receivable, outside of you, and they're like, hey, our wire transfer changed, and this off of an email string you're used to, having a conversation is legitimate, and they're just a little bit off. They're like, here's this new wire transfer information. Can you go ahead and send the payment for the invoice? And you go ahead and you do it. It's been a compromised account, and the cyber criminal had gotten on and looked for that type of email string to reply off of to send that information to you, because it wouldn't set off normal flags. But you would see that at like 2:40 in the morning or 5:40 in the morning. So always pay attention to the date. It's like a nice call out to help you out with that. But we'll once again share this slide. Okay, go ahead.
Another timely one, Angel, that I didn't mention to you earlier, but I read another information source this morning that talked about Zoom. So the hackers have gotten a hold of a fake Zoom where you can log on and they say something about, your account's not working anymore. Log on out here and we'll reactivate your Zoom account. So that's another timely one that we got some information on, or I saw it this morning. I don't know if you saw that one as well.
Yeah. No, that's a really good call, Valerie. I think anything that has a sense of urgency, that makes you feel like you have to reply immediately, that makes you feel like something is broken and no longer working right, all of those things that create a need to respond quickly, you need to stop, sit back for a moment, and really look at that email before you move forward. If we had time, sextortion, I know is an awkward one, but is important. What they do is some bad actors will take that dump that Valerie was talking about of like 240 million credentials. And what they do is they have the password, and they know it's been like checked already across all of the applications to see if it was valid, but they reuse it by putting it in a subject and sending it off to everybody's email address. So each email compromised the email and the password. The password's a subject. They send the email, and it says, we're watching your computer. We know what you're doing. You have to pay this Bitcoin, you know, if you don't want us to tell you about it. And it's not real. None of it's real. They're just reusing that dump to try to get you to pay them. So that's another thing to watch out for. And then another statistic. So enabling multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication can ensure that your accounts are up to 99.9 less likely to be compromised. This is coming from Microsoft, this statistic. And I agree. I think that MFA can be worked around, but it is much more difficult, and they're looking for, cyber criminals are looking for quick wins, not looking for where they have to do an extra effort, okay? So they're gonna look for the ones that don't have multi-factor authentication. So what is multi-factor authentication? So it's a way of taking something that we're going to get proof you are who you are by something you know, something you have, or something you are. So you first would go ahead and log in with your password. It requires an additional level of proof. So it could be like Google Authenticator or Duo is a smartphone app that you could have on your phone. Duo can push to your phone a request and you approve it. You can have a code sent to your phone by text, by email address, so that you can put the code in. You can have hard tokens, it's like a USB token. You can have security badges, and behavior analysis is sometimes used by banks. So you have these different ways that you can go about doing multi-factor authentication. For the most part, it's code sent by email, SMS, or using a smartphone app like Google Authenticator, Duo. Microsoft has an MFA as well. Also, there is Authy.com, which we'll share with you guys after this, and it is a good personal management two-factor authentication for social sites that you guys can use. It's just a one-off we thought we'd share with you.
Angel hasn't shared it with you guys. She didn't wear it today, but she has a t-shirt that says MFA, no other way.
Yeah. I'm gonna make it a background. I swear I'm just gonna have it kind of keep going across. I can't say enough how much it's worth the initial time and investment to get that set up for your, if you could just do that, I mean, it would be, every single thing that we've seen could have been stopped, for the most part, could have been stopped with MFA was in place. And that includes like for VPN, that includes for any external sites that you're externally facing for your work or your personal, and also for your email. Okay, so anything where you can log on externally, we recommend having two-factor authentication. Multi-factor just means two or more. Two-factor is just literally saying two things, right? So that's kind of why you'll hear both in the conversations. But good call out, Valerie. So email hygiene, we have also run across this with some clients and just in past jobs that I've had. So do you share PII or PHI within your email? Is client information, credit card information, links in the email to folders or files with sensitive business data? What about your contact list? Are you okay with somebody that's compromised your account having access to that? Any banking information that's accessible? Invoices, wire transfer information. So you gotta start thinking about what is in my business email. And that's not enough, right? So we have what's in your email, but if you have like Google Drive, or if you have 360 or Google Drive, if you have Google email or 365, you also have access then if you log into, if it's 365, like OneNote, any of your SharePoint files or folders that you have, your Teams chats, if it's 365, or I'm sorry, if it's Google, then they would have access to like Google Drive, they would have access to Hangouts, they would have access to, trying to think if there's anything else, the emails. So what you want to do when you're looking at that is, what is it, so when you're looking at it, you're like, what is it that if they compromise my account is not okay for them to have access to, and how can I clean that up, right? So the email hygiene, dental hygiene. So email hygiene is the idea of, for 365, for example, if you delete the email, it goes to a deleted items folder and stays there. Unless you set up a policy in 365 to say after how many days I want to have this sent to be purged, and then 7 days that's deleted entirely from the email. Otherwise, what's in the deleted items folder stays there until somebody manually permanently removes it from the deleted items folder. So there's things like that. So what is your data retention policy? So you kind of want to come up with, this is how long for our organization we want to keep things, our email. So we want to keep it because of regulatory requirements or just for our own personal needs. We want to keep email maybe 1 year, 2 year, and then we're going to define that as our time frame. How long in the deleted items folder? Well, we want to have it for 30 days and then cleans up, because Google does it 30 days automatically and then it's permanently deleted. Maybe you want to do the same thing for 365. So you start first by defining within the organization and your steering committee group, or that your council that you set up, what it is that you guys have determined should be the process for your organization that's best for the security. And then once you've kind of defined all of that, we recommend, only because we've seen where we've had to go through emails that were 10 years old for PHI and PII, we recommend then you create within, and I'm using those Google and 365 as examples just because they're large email providers. You create a policy that automatically does that for you. So it's not a requirement for an employee to manage that. It is something that you automatically do within the policies of 365. So it would automatically be deleted after a certain period of time. You can also set it to go, we need to have that data for maybe 2 years for compliance, but we don't need to have it in the email folder in case a cyber criminal got access to it. So we want it to go to archive that they won't see, but an administrator will see. So there's all these different things that you kind of need to talk about. We also recommend looking at, do you allow external forwarding of work emails? Should you allow that, or should you not allow that? Or can you whitelist specific ones that you want to do and block the rest? Should you allow employees to install apps or extensions for their email account? So if, for example, they want to get an extension for their email account that makes it so that they can plan out when emails are going to be sent and time frame it. And so they want to download that, and they do. It also, that app or extension has read and write access to the calendar. Are you okay with that kind of access to that app or extension? So it's do you want to allow it where they can do it and you monitor it and are notified when it happens? Do you want to set that policy up in place where they can't do it, they request it, you review it, and then you give that permission to them? So those are kind of conversations you want to have with it. In an email banner, we recommend, if an email is coming outside of your email domain, just set up a little binder or email banner that kind of lets them know that it's coming from externally. So if the CEO is spoofed to sending an email to accounts payable, you'll see a warning right there in the email right at the top saying, this email has been sent outside of, in our case, adafio.com. Okay, please review carefully. So that's kind of what we recommend high level. Any other thoughts on that, Valerie? Or
No, I think you covered everything there well. Yep.
Yeah. I was trying to think. We would definitely recommend, and Valerie, this is because you had mentioned that earlier, is policies you should have in place about how to share your PHI and PII within, say you have 365 or Google. You don't want to use OneNote to store PHI or PII because that's accessible if somebody compromises your account.
Absolutely.
And then really high level, these are these additional little bonus ones we're going to give you all. And a lot of this, we'll have some additional resources we'll share with you after the webinar. Patch your systems, we've kind of talked about that. Set auto update for your applications and devices. Change any default credentials that you have. So if you have routers or switches, make sure that you go in there and you set a new set of credentials as soon as you get your devices. We would recommend that for anything IoT, so Internet of Things, anything like that has a default. When you're first setting it up, take it as part of the process to change your default credentials. And at home on your Wi-Fi, if you're using that, please go home and change that tonight. So we would recommend that for your home network right away. Make sure you have antivirus or EDR, which is endpoint detection and response, one of those installed on all your devices. So in case malware is downloaded to your laptop or your desktop, that you have antivirus or EDR in the background also checking. It's another layer of protection we recommend. Passwords, we recommend using passphrases, so it can help you to remember. So something like if you're a car model hobbyist, you can say glue car model hobby, or like even something as simple as I love New York, or New York, I'm from New York, sorry, NFL football. Passwords should be at least 12 characters. Here's an interesting little fact we were talking about earlier, is 12 characters for brute force checking right now is up to a century, and 8 characters is an hour. So this is why 16 obviously would even be better, but we're saying at least 12 characters, use capital, lowercase letters, symbols, and numbers. The more characters, the more combinations. So that combination set is like sextillion, so different combinations. And then never use the same password twice. And that doesn't mean, not use the same password twice in the same application, is don't use the same password against any applications whatsoever or services that you log into. And a way to do that, besides having a notebook where you're managing hundreds of those, is the password manager. And we kind of talked about that a little bit. We'll give you some recommendations for some good password managers that you can use that are low cost and easy to use. And then we have some free ones that we find to be really good, actually, for personal and for really small companies. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about disabling macros, Microsoft macros, and routinely run vulnerability scans for your externally facing systems. It's the idea of not just running a vulnerability scan against your website or against any other applications you have that are outgoing to the public, but do it routinely. That was a great call out, Valerie.
Yeah, and that, you know, it does take some time and resources to review, you know, vulnerability scans and other things. So just thinking about back to that committee and planning, or even if it's a small company or group, you know, how often do you want to run those? Not really just one done mentality, but we want to run those at some routine cadence, and then have a little bit of time, of course, set aside to review those and action out, you know, findings and results as well.
Absolutely. There is value in the regulations that are in place that are usually for larger companies, right? You can find cost-effective ways, even with a smaller company that doesn't have those regulations. Their regulations are in place to try to make these companies more secure, and it's doing a good job, but we don't have those for small, medium-sized without, like, if you're not in healthcare or whatnot, with those requirements. And some of that we can grab from that regulation and say, well, you could do this, and you could do it at this cost-effective way that isn't going to break your budget or even put a dent in it, that could help strengthen your company or your organization going forward. So some of these are, we're talking about them, and we might be thinking of terms of they're expensive, but external vulnerability scan can be inexpensive, and we could come up with ways to help you find a way and a good resource for that as well. Okay. So we're going to talk about macros really quick, because this number is huge. 90% of email malware is distributed via macros. And macros are like, in Windows, you have Excel, PowerPoint, and Word that has, and it looks like this here. At the top, when you go to open it, they have a macro that you can have macros running. I've used them in Excel. So you get a security warning, and it says enable content when you download it, and most of us just click it to get moving and go ahead and look at it. At that point, the macro starts running and downloads the malware. Hopefully your AV or your EDR catches that, but that is another layer that we're all talking about, right? As many layers as we can make you stronger. So if you don't need to use macros and there's no business need for it, we would recommend to have an enterprise policy to block that on your workstations, or disable that for Proofpoint, PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. And then that way you don't have to worry about the end user having to remember, don't click enable content. So we be careful with documents from people you trust, like we talked about. Their accounts can be compromised. You can go off an email string as a cyber criminal, reply to them, and it legitimately looks like it's coming from them with a download saying, please see this invoice, and you're used to seeing that. So you click it, you enable content, and the macro is downloading malware in the background. So you can do it on a personal level, and we'll send you resources if you want to do this at home or in a very, very small company, like 1 or 2 people. We can show you how to do that manually without having to do it at an enterprise level. And also we have resources on how you could implement that at an enterprise level. Now, enterprise level, you can say, I want to disable this across the board except for these instances. So you can kind of define what those instances are. So the idea of whitelisting or safe listing. And anything else you can think on that one, Valerie? I think that one's covered.
Nope. Perfect.
All right.
So now we're going to switch over to, thinking about why does your organization need to focus on cybersecurity insurance and look at that. So another statistic here for you, there was a 424%, which is just an outrageous statistic, increase in new small business cyber breaches last year. So not small to medium, but actual small businesses, 424% increase in breaches. So, has your organization considered the benefit of a cybersecurity insurance? So, typically most businesses, even small businesses, we're covering insurance to cover flood damage, fire, burglaries, but often we forget about or even know what is our coverage amount, even in a typical policy on cyber. Do we have any in there at all? Have you looked into that? Have you thought about the cost involved if you did have a data breach, a ransomware attack, or you had some kind of, personally identifiable information of your customers, your clients, maybe your employees, or protected health information for those healthcare entities and business associates of healthcare providers as well, and insurance companies. So how would your business survive a full-blown cyber attack? And we want to go over now next how to make sure you get the right kind of insurance based on your needs and questions to ask your broker. So, we're healthcare and cybersecurity consultants. We're not insurance brokers, so we don't want to, relay information that would be misconstrued that, we know everything, all the ins and outs of insurance, coverage and amounts and things like that. But these are some good tips that you're going to get, to talk to your brokers about. So one more statistic here, 60% of small businesses are victims of a cyber attack go out of business within 6 months. So source for this statistic was from an interview with Tech Republic. So that's another really scary statistic for us. I think that one's been around for a little bit. So here are just some tips here to look at. There's some things to talk to your brokers about, your cyber policies. Again, sometimes they're separate policies. Sometimes you have coverage in other insurance policies that you have. So things to ask your broker and to look for in current policies today are forensics costs, things like call centers, crisis management costs, notification expenses, credit and ID monitoring that you typically have to offer after this, data breach coaches, and sometimes extortion costs. Data breach cost estimates. So how much would a data breach cost on estimate of 6,000 records? $700,000. This is a huge amount. So this is based on a breach of 6,000 records containing PII and PHI of both employees and patients. So you can look here and see some of the cost of some of these types of services. So these are reactive costs. And so of course, when a situation happens in any business, whether you're small, medium, or enterprise, this is an immediate, I need to act now. I need to figure out what to do next. And so, typically rates and coverages and amounts that these things are going to cost start running up very quickly. We do, again, with some of the tools and resources that Angel's talked about, having Melissa push out to you guys, we've got a way that you can run the numbers yourself, and it's www.atbay.com data breach calculator. So you can look at those numbers based on your business and run that as well.
Also, we've had conversations with some brokers ourselves, and something that they mentioned additionally is to defend you in a lawsuit or a regulatory investigation, look for the words duty to defend wording to make sure that that is there, as well as see if they provide coverage in excess of any other applicable insurance that you have. I think those were a couple of
Yes.
things.
Yes, thank you, Angel. So cybersecurity insurance, cyber policies are non-standard and they vary widely by carrier and they evolve rapidly. So we definitely recommend that you review that policy annually and then you compare that to your business needs. How has your business changed? How has it grown in the last 12 months? Do you need to look at, you know, additional coverage, or again, making sure and combing through and going back and making sure I have enough coverage to cover all of these different things that were mentioned on the prior slide. So this is, again, just something that's very beneficial to just take the time to look at that on that annual basis.
Okay. All right, we will share the slide deck and any additional resources after this presentation, and feel free even after this to reach out to us to answer any questions you have. Our email addresses are here in the slide deck. The Chamber of Commerce has that information as well in case you need it. And we have the list of all of the resources we'll get to you. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I'll just come through the chat. I didn't see any questions out in the chat. Does anybody want to come off mute and ask any questions or just have anything they want to throw out there for the group? We'll take that silence as a no. Hopefully you guys are still there. And again, we thank you guys for having us today and allowing us to cover this topic with you guys.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out to present to us. And like I said, this will be recorded. If there's information that you would like for me to push out to everyone who registered, I know there were a number of people who registered that weren't able to make it. Just send that to me and I'll forward it to that list, and I'll get you a list of at least names of the folks that registered to join. And again, I'll get you this video as soon as it saves, and then we'll figure out a Dropbox or something to get you the video, and we'll get it to our YouTube site.
Thank you.
Again, thank you everybody for joining, and thanks to the team from Adafio. We really appreciate it. It's a lot of good information.
Thank you. You guys take care.
Yeah, hope everybody has a great day.
Yes, absolutely.